So, how does a car dealership make money? Let's start with what a dealership even is, because most people picture it wrong. There are two broad categories. Franchise dealerships are the ones you're picturing right now: a Ford showroom, a Toyota showroom, a BMW showroom, each one branded, signed, and operated under a strict agreement with the manufacturer. The dealership doesn't own the brand, it's licensed to sell under it, the same way a franchisee runs a McDonald's without owning the McDonald's corporation. Then there are independent dealerships, which typically deal in used cars across multiple makes with no manufacturer relationship at all and far more freedom over how they operate. Here's the detail that surprises people: manufacturers almost never sell cars directly to the public. Companies like Toyota, Ford, and Volkswagen build the cars, but they hand the actual selling, the showroom, the financing conversations, the servicing, the awkward small talk while the finance paperwork prints, over to independently owned dealership businesses. Why would a manufacturer give up control of the most customer facing part of its entire business? Because retail is a completely different skill set from manufacturing, and a genuinely painful one to do well at scale. Running showrooms in every town, employing sales staff, managing local advertising, financing thousands of individual customers, and running service departments across an entire country is a logistical nightmare that most manufacturers would rather not own. It's cheaper and less risky to let local entrepreneurs take on that cost and that risk in exchange for the right to sell under a trusted badge. Tesla is the famous exception, more on that later, but for the overwhelming majority of the industry, this manufacturer-dealer split is the foundation everything else is built on, and that foundation is expensive to build on. Opening a franchise dealership is not a small business decision, it's closer to opening a mid-sized factory. Manufacturers typically demand a location in a specific catchment area, a showroom built to their exact design and branding standards, the specific tiles, the specific lighting, the specific glass frontage, plus a fully equipped workshop with manufacturer-approved diagnostic equipment, a parts department, trained technicians, and enough new and used inventory sitting on the lot to look genuinely appealing rather than half empty. Add land or long-term lease costs, construction or renovation, a franchise fee to the manufacturer itself, staff across sales, service, parts, and admin, the various dealer licenses and insurances required to legally sell vehicles and offer finance, and enough working capital to survive the inevitable slow months. Put all of that together, and a single franchise dealership, particularly for a premium brand, can easily require an investment running into the millions of pounds before a single customer walks through the door. This is not a business you start with a bank loan and a dream. It's a business you start with serious capital, or you don't start it at all. So where does the money actually come from once the doors are open? This is where the real story begins, because a dealership isn't one business. It's several businesses stitched together, and they behave completely differently from one another. New car sales are, ironically, usually the worst margin in the building. Manufacturers set the price, set the discount structure, and control supply, leaving the dealer with a gross margin that's often just a few percentage points of the sale price. What actually makes new car sales worthwhile isn't the sticker price at all. It's the incentive sitting behind it. Manufacturers pay dealers volume bonuses for hitting sales targets and additional bonuses for customer satisfaction scores, meaning a dealer can sell a car at close to break even and still turn a profit purely from the manufacturer's back-end payment. It's a strange system where the actual transaction with the customer is almost a formality, and the real deal is happening quietly between the dealer and the manufacturer. Used cars are a different animal entirely, and a far kinder one to the dealer's bank balance. Because there's no manufacturer setting the price, margins are typically several times higher than on new vehicles. A dealer buys a car cheaply, often as a trade-in from someone upgrading to something new, reconditions it. New tires, a valet, minor bodywork, a service, and sells it at a healthy markup. Trade-ins are particularly valuable because the dealer controls both sides of that negotiation: what they offer for your old car and what they'll eventually sell it for. Then there's the part of the business that quietly outperforms almost everything else: finance and insurance, known in the trade simply as F&I. This is where dealerships genuinely make serious money, and it explains why finance offers are pushed so hard the moment you show any interest in a car. When a dealer arranges a PCP or hire purchase agreement, sells you extended warranty cover, or adds gap insurance to protect against your car being written off while you still owe money on it, they typically earn a commission from the finance company or insurer on top of the car sale itself. For many dealerships, F&I contributes a disproportionate share of total gross profit relative to how much floor space and staff time it actually takes up. That's also, incidentally, why the finance office always seems to take longer than the actual test drive. The service department deserves special mention because it's arguably the most important part of the whole business, even though it gets the least attention from customers. Selling a car is a one-off transaction. Servicing that car is a recurring one for years, sometimes over a decade, and it comes with margins that make the new car department look embarrassing by comparison. Labor rates in a franchised workshop are priced for trained manufacturer-certified technicians using genuine parts, and that combination generates steady, predictable profit that doesn't depend on convincing anyone to make a 30,000-pound decision. Many dealership groups will privately tell you that service is what keeps the lights on during a bad sales year. Alongside it sits the parts department, selling components both to service customers and to independent garages, plus body shops for accident repair work, fleet sales to businesses buying in bulk, and the accessories counter, which quietly profits from the very human instinct to add a roof box you'll use twice. None of this comes free, though, and the cost side of running a dealership is relentless. There's the property itself, whether owned or leased, staff wages across every department, sales commissions layered on top of base salaries, and technician pay, which tends to be higher given the certifications required. Utilities for a building with service bays and forecourt lighting running around the clock aren't trivial. Insurance covering the premises, staff, and an enormous rotating inventory of vehicles adds up quickly. And advertising, both local and increasingly online, is a constant expense in a crowded market. Perhaps the least visible but most dangerous cost is floor plan financing, the loan a dealer takes out to actually buy the inventory sitting on the lot. Very few dealerships pay cash for their stock. Instead, they borrow against it, meaning every car sitting unsold on the forecourt is quietly accumulating interest charges every single day it doesn't sell. That's before accounting for depreciation, because a new car losing value the moment it's driven isn't just a joke about buyers. It's a genuine cost to the dealer on unsold stock too. Add ongoing technology costs, from customer management software to online sales platforms, and the compliance and manufacturer standards costs required just to keep the franchise agreement in good standing, and you start to see why revenue and profit are two very different numbers in this business. Which brings us to the real question. Why don't dealers, with all this revenue flowing through the building, make enormous margins? The honest answer is competition, and lots of it. Customers can walk into 3 dealerships in an afternoon and negotiate each one against the others, which caps how much any single dealer can charge. Manufacturers set new car pricing and discount structures centrally, stripping dealers of pricing power on their highest visibility product. Financing costs on inventory eat into margin before a single car is even sold. And discounting, especially toward the end of a sales quarter when targets loom, routinely erodes whatever thin margin existed in the first place. It's worth comparing this to a business model everyone already understands intuitively: the supermarket. Supermarkets operate on famously thin margins too, often in the low single digits, and survive purely on enormous transaction volume. A car dealership is doing something structurally similar, just with a transaction value roughly 1,000 times larger and a lot more paperwork. High turnover, modest margin per unit, and profitability that depends far more on efficient operations than on any individual sale. And this is a genuinely risky business to be in, beyond the everyday grind of thin margins. Economic downturns hit big-ticket discretionary purchases like cars especially hard, and a dealership can go from healthy to loss-making within a single bad quarter. Supply shortages, like the semiconductor crisis that starved car production for years, can leave a dealership with an empty lot and nothing to sell regardless of demand. Interest rate rises make financing more expensive for both the dealer's inventory loans and the customer's monthly payments, cooling demand from both directions at once. The shift toward electric vehicles is upending decades of established service department revenue since EVs need dramatically less routine maintenance than combustion engines, which is wonderful for owners and genuinely threatening for a dealer's most reliable profit center. Manufacturers can and do pressure dealers over sales targets and standards compliance. Used car values can swing wildly and strand a dealer holding overvalued stock. And online competition from digital-only sellers continues to squeeze the traditional showroom model from every angle. To make this concrete, let's walk through a simplified, illustrative example. Not a real business, just realistic numbers roughly in line with how a mid-sized franchise dealership might look, since actual figures vary enormously by country, brand, and dealership size. Imagine total annual revenue across new cars, used cars, finance, and service of around £40 million. Sounds enormous. But gross profit across all of that, after the direct cost of the vehicles and parts themselves, might land somewhere around £4 to £5 million, roughly 10 to 12% of revenue. Strip out staff wages, property costs, floor plan interest, advertising, and everything else discussed above, and the net profit that actually reaches the owner might realistically sit somewhere between 1 and 2% of total revenue, perhaps £400,000 to £800,000 on that £40 million of sales. It's real money, but it's a rounding error compared to the scale of the revenue generating it, and it's why so much of the profit that does exist tends to come disproportionately from service and finance rather than the headline car sales themselves. So where is this whole industry heading? Electric vehicles are the biggest structural shift in a century of car retail, not just because of what's under the bonnet, but because of what they threaten to remove from the dealer's business model entirely: routine servicing. Direct-to-consumer selling is the other seismic change, with Tesla having built its entire retail model around owning its own stores rather than franchising them out, cutting dealers out of the picture altogether and forcing established manufacturers to at least experiment with similar direct sale approaches of their own. Online car buying has matured from a novelty into a genuine channel, letting customers configure, finance, and even complete a purchase almost entirely from a laptop, with the car simply delivered to their door. Some manufacturers are testing subscription models, treating cars more like a flexible service than a fixed asset you own for years, and AI is beginning to reshape everything from inventory pricing to how a dealership finds and follows up with potential buyers. None of this means dealerships are disappearing. It means they're being forced to evolve, shifting emphasis away from being car-selling showrooms and toward being service, finance, and logistics hubs that happen to have a showroom attached. The ones that adapt to that reality will likely still be standing in 20 years. The ones that don't, treating the model as static in a market that clearly isn't, are the ones actually at risk. So, is owning a car dealership actually a good business? The honest answer is, it depends entirely on how well it's run, and it's a genuinely difficult business to run well. It demands enormous upfront capital, delivers thin margins on its most visible product, and exposes the owner to real risk from interest rates, supply shocks, and manufacturer pressure all at once. But underneath that visible, low-margin surface sits a quieter, steadier engine of finance commissions and service revenue that, managed properly, can make a well-run dealership genuinely and durably profitable, year after year, long after the excitement of the new car smell has worn off. Because that's the real secret of this industry. The showroom is the stage. The real business happens everywhere else in the building.